want to ask you, because this is such a big connection piece, is there anything else for you that's going on that you might be anxious about, like coming down from that weekend? I know right now you're putting it all toward your body, but is there anything else that's happening and going on that you may be experiencing yesterday, particularly when you were feeling those feelings?
Wait, that's such a good question. No one's ever asked me that.
Welcome to Normalize the Conversation by Inspiring My Generation. I'm your host, Francesca Reicherter, and today I'm joined by Francesca Emma, a licensed mental health counselor and millennial therapist who truly gets what it feels like to be overwhelmed by body image, anxiety, and the pressure to hold everything together. In this episode, we dive into how the beliefs we form in childhood quietly shape the way we speak to ourselves today, especially around our bodies, our worth, and the expectations we try to meet. Francesca breaks down why so many of us fall into these patterns of comparison, overthinking, or self-criticism, and how to start shifting toward a more grounded, compassionate inner world. Settle in and keep listening. This conversation offers that kind of clarity and relief we all deserved years ago.
Francesca, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have someone with my name on the podcast.
I know, this is so fun.
I'm really excited for our conversation because growing up, I wasn't really taught about body confidence. I was taught to not like my body and fear growing. So I'm excited for our conversation. But before we begin, I want to check in. How are you really?
How am I really? I'm actually doing really well today. It is the weekend after a long week. I am ready for some time with my family and just kind of to be in a space where I get to decompress and get my nervous system re-regulated, because usually by Friday, it's not there. And so that reset is something that I'm looking forward to. So today I'm doing okay. Last week, that would have been a different story, but today, okay.
Love that. It's so nice when the weekend comes around. I can't wait to just decompress and let go of all the stress that happens during the week. I recently traveled to do a keynote, which was super fun. But one thing that kept coming up for me during it was like this fear of how I looked. And it's caused so much anxiety over the past week that even yesterday I was getting dressed and I was like, I look terrible in everything. Why do I stand this way? Why am I wearing these jeans? Like, it doesn't fit my body right. And I just kind of started to spiral. So I am excited for the weekend to wear sweats and just give myself a chance to not be so in my head.
And so I want to ask you, because this is such a big connection piece, is there anything else for you that's going on that you might be anxious about, like coming down from that weekend? I know right now you're putting it all toward your body, but is there anything else that's happening and going on that you may be experiencing yesterday, particularly when you were feeling those feelings?
Wait, that's such a good question. No one's ever asked me that. Yes, I found out. So I moved to California at the beginning of the year. I was to spend most of my time in California. But before that, I was traveling back and forth, taking care of my grandmother in Florida. And yesterday she ended up back in the hospital, had a really bad fall. And I was feeling so bad because I wasn't there. And now maybe that is good.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I like to challenge clients who walk in my door with, and people who are listening, anybody, is when you're having those days that really feel overwhelming with your body, take a minute and just like stop and reflect on what's happening that day. And a lot of times people are like, no, I just feel bad about my body. And that may be true, but most of the time we're taking things out on our body that may just be things that we are experiencing elsewhere, and we don't know where to put it. So you feeling that about grandma definitely is adding to this disconnect with you feeling this way about your body. And most of the time, it's just even that recognition that can help us switch gears. So just knowing that in the moment, pausing and reflecting when you're having that bad body image day and saying, okay, but what else is happening for me? That can be an aha moment for a lot of people.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way. And it was never trying to think back now to like my childhood and all these moments where I decided that starving myself was the answer. And when I look back at it, there was so much stress happening around me, and I'm someone who goes inward. I take everything out on myself. And I wonder how much, like, if there were more conversations on like how to just check in with yourself, how to regulate your nervous system, how to do any of these things, would I've ended up in a place where my kidneys were almost shutting down because I got too thin?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that the conversations really start at home with parents, with educators, with caregivers, like with anybody who's around children. If they start to recognize and be a little bit more connected to themselves and what's happening and how to have these conversations, it definitely has an effect on how children view themselves. So children in general will directly model and learn what they are seeing on the outside. And what I think a lot of caregivers don't really necessarily understand is it's those little comments that are made throughout the day, or nuances that you do with your food, or when you look in the mirror, or when you say something along the lines of, I have to be good today, or I ate that and I need to go work out now because I had a donut. Those things these children are hearing. And as a result, they start internalizing them. So while it's never malicious, it's never like, I want my child to develop, disordered eating or a bad relationship with food. It's that underlying theme and tone and lack of conversation around it that leads children to start to have these negative feelings and turn inward towards their bodies.
Yes. Oh, that is so true. And I know for me, with my mom, she was like, well, I never said anything was wrong with your body. But when she would make comments about hers, and then I started looking at mine like that. So we don't realize that we are picking these up. And even the media movies I'd watch, there was one movie, the Bring It On series. I was a cheerleader, loved that series. And one of the first movie lines that I remembered was Pacific Vista has never had a fat cheerleader. And the girl, Brianna, was a healthy, normal size. And as a young cheerleader, young kid, I took that as, oh no, I can't grow.
Right. During a key time in your life when you needed to grow, right? When your body's saying, I have to grow, feeling like, what can I do to stop that growth? And I wonder if you were able to have that conversation where you said something to your mom in that moment, like, what is she saying? What does that mean? What's going on? That then she would have had an opportunity to have that conversation with you. But unfortunately, what happens specifically with media is that a lot of times, I'm a parent, my child's watching TV, I'm doing something else most of the time, right? I'm taking care of something. So that opportunity is not really necessarily there all the time. So what's so powerful is, obviously we want to watch what we give our children to watch and inform ourselves. But we also, going back to what I said before, we really want to empower important conversations and good themes around body in general. So you made a comment about your mom never mentioning anything negative about your body, but maybe saying it about her own. And as a kid, we have to remember that we are looking up to our caregivers. Children are looking up to their caregivers as though they are superheroes, right? So if mom, this superhero, thinks she's fat or her body needs to be toned or she's not good enough in some way, well, we of course are going to start to believe that about ourselves. So I think another thing that's important for caregivers to really understand is that you, in their eyes, are perfect. Right. Until you're a teenager, and then you're not perfect anymore. But up until adolescence, you're perfect. And so if you're sharing negative things about yourself, the children are going to start believing those things about themselves. And that's where that whole not good enough mentality really sort of opens up.
Okay. So for someone like me who, I'm not anywhere near the point of having kids yet, can't get someone to date me to start with, but let's pretend. So who really struggles with body image, I spend way too many hours examining myself in the mirror, feeling I actually just took the batteries out of my scale last month.
Yeah.
And I'm so tempted to go buy
I'm
more.
a no scale house girl.
I've lasted the month without putting them back in. So that's been really great. I actually threw out the batteries. So I don't have any, I'd have to go to the store and consciously buy them. That's been helpful. But for someone who is so much like that, who if I eat 3 meals, I'm like, I have to walk 5 miles to just make up for the fact. So for someone who's so ingrained, and even though I'm conscious of it, it's really hard for me to counter those behaviors. Let's say I did have children. How can I begin to maybe make changes or open conversations that support body confidence or positivity or just self-love in general, instead of unintentionally kind of projecting my stuff onto them?
Well, I think for the first part, the fact that you're intentionally aware makes it a little bit easier because you're going to be mindful about it. So the first step, I think, for anybody who's going to have a child or be around children is to start to check in with themselves, right? Start to check in with where am I with my body and my comfortability level? And what message do I want to send to my children or to the people around me? So like I said, it really starts with what we're talking about out loud and modeling behaviors. So you're saying 3 meals a day really makes you feel uncomfortable. You're going to still want to model those 3 meals a day for your children and the capability to have snacks in between and just healthy eating. At the same time, you're going to want to look in and probably in the beginning, continue to do your own work. And if someone who doesn't have access to their own work, then it becomes more being mindful. So I always say, check in with yourself as a parent and a caregiver, where you're at with your body. When you started that conversation about that connection, maybe yesterday was just a bad day and body image wise, start to figure out and pause and reflect on your own body image stuff so that you can help your children then have those conversations. Because at some point, your child is going to come into the door and say, I don't like XYZ about myself. I don't like my stomach. I don't like my hips. I don't like something. And the initial response as parents is to say, oh, no, you're beautiful. Oh, no, that's just how God made you. Oh, no, you're perfect. And not validate it for them. So the second part to that is validation. We want to give our kids validation. Instead of saying no and trying to just push it under the rug, we want to say things like, that's really hard. I'm sorry you feel that way. I feel that way sometimes too. I know how tough that is. Or, being honest, mom struggles sometimes, and then rephrase it, then be able to say, why is that so important to you? Why does that feel so badly? What does your body mean to you, right? Get curious with your children about those things because we want to just poo-poo them, but they're valid feelings that they're experiencing. And did anybody ever say to you, why do you feel like you have to not grow?
No, never. Wow.
Powerful questions in terms of our ability to really get curious, right? And so I think that when we have these open conversations and we educate our children from a very young age, like I personally believe in educating and thinking in this mentality as a baby and a toddler. My son at about 3 years old, I would make dinner for him and then I would eat later when my husband got home, partially because I just wanted a nice quiet meal, And at about 3, he said to me, and he's like, oh, why don't you eat dinner? And so he didn't know that once I put him to bed, I was eating dinner with my husband in a quiet space because what he could see was what he saw. And that was what I was modeling to him. And so then I had to start eating dinner with him, and I made that conscious effort. Had he never said that to me, that would have went on for years because that was what was working for me as a person without really recognizing what message I was sending. So I'm grateful that he did. And at that point, I had been years in as an eating disorder therapist, and I would have never imagined at age 3 that what I'm doing is having an impact on their body, but it is reality.
You said so many things I want to touch on.
Sorry, go ahead, stop and go.
No, that was so good. So one, I love that. I mean, that is really powerful, 3 years old, to be recognizing that and articulating it. To see, we don't realize how young these images, like what we're learning as a kid. A lot of times we say, oh, kids are so resilient. Kids, they're sponges. They really are. And we don't always give them credit for that. We just assume like, oh, well, these conversations when they're an adolescent going through puberty and their body's changing. That's
absolutely. And even then we're not educating them enough. Like girls are supposed to gain 40 pounds during puberty. No one told me that. And had someone maybe told me that, I probably would have not been praying that I wasn't going to get boobs or whatever I was doing because I felt so uncomfortable. So, my daughter at age 11 looked in the mirror and said, why do my hips come out like this? And I was able to give her that response like, okay, let's talk about why your hips go out like this. Like there's childbirth that it has to do and the way that your body supports you and hormone levels. And they're not too young to take in the information. And especially because this generation is flooded with medias that are AI imaging and filtered and just a constant feed of this idealistic and perfectionist bodies that we're experiencing. So even more so, the conversations have to start younger. And we can't wait to adolescents to begin that conversation, because by then they've already gotten preconceived notions about what a good body, bad body, et cetera is.
Yeah, that's so true. I didn't know that either. Gained 40 pounds during puberty. I mean, it makes sense looking back at it. And I remember feeling terrified. And I love my mom, great mom. We really didn't talk about my body changing at all. And it was kind of uncomfortable, because then people would make comments about my body changing and I was feeling uncomfortable and I couldn't control it. And it was just so overwhelming. And I started to feel more and more insecure about these things I couldn't control. And then I went inward and I decided to not eat because I can control not eating. And had there just been a simple conversation, even if it was like a 2-minute conversation once, it really could have made a difference. And we don't realize that these conversations matter before someone comes to you feeling really insecure about it.
And they continue to matter throughout, because there's continual spaces. Like you said, there are going to be children, even with the most positive images, the most positive conversations that they've had, who are still not going to feel secure about their body. And that's okay, because I think as women, I could speak, men I hear as well, but women, there are a lot of things that we're uncomfortable with our bodies about, and that's okay. We have to normalize that. But being able to talk about it and send those messages early gives them confidence. And that confidence then, when they're feeling uncomfortable and insecure, allows them to prevail and kind of go to other coping skills, right? You went to a coping skill for control that was eating disorder related. There are other coping skills that are more manageable, and giving them access to those types of things because they feel confident is really a turning point in terms of eating disorder prevention. Will eating disorders live on? Yes, it is a maladaptive coping skill, but the more educated as caregivers we can pass along that message, the more educated children are, and the more educated that they can then choose more adaptive coping skills for themselves.
It seems so simple. Right? And we'd be providing these tools and conversations, and yet it's also very difficult when you've never had them before. One thing I always say when I feel very frustrated and we have conversations like this, I'm like, why weren't these conversations held with me? I always have to think back to, well, my mom didn't have these conversations, right? And no one was talking about it. I have to give her grace, to give myself grace. And but it's so powerful and important. And one thing you said that I really loved was about kind of validating that experience of like, I've gone through that too. I feel that way sometimes too, because I know for me, I always thought I was the only one. Because it was, if I said, I feel uncomfortable in my body, I don't like the way I look in this outfit, it was like, oh, get over it. You're being dramatic. You're looking for attention.
Yes.
It was never, I feel that way too sometimes. And this is what helps me. And had that been a conversation, maybe I would have learned some tools, or didn't feel like I couldn't talk about it.
Right. And again, not malicious to any parent or caregiver, because like you said, they haven't had the conversations, but a lot of times they're going in not really knowing much about their own body image. Yeah. So that's that examination piece for ourselves to pause and connect, because your mom, may have felt that way, but she didn't recognize what connections were made in that capacity. And like, she wasn't able to share that because it wasn't even connected. And so that's like the number one space. Can we connect it? Can we send these positive messages? So at the young age, we want to model those positive messages. We also want to talk about food in not a good or a bad way. Like, it needs to be a neutral space where, instead of creating like guilt around enjoying food or teaching them to distrust like their cravings and hungers, we want to reconnect them and just talk about like a neutrality. Food give us energy. This is what we need energy for. getting in tune with their body. What is your body asking right now? We want to really avoid, and I know as a parent, it's super hard, but like healthy, not healthy, or junky and cheap food, or, because that starts to give these negative connotations rather than saying everything has a space. How does this food make you feel, right? What do you feel when you're doing that? Can we connect our minds and our bodies?
Right. I feel for me in the beginning, that awareness and that connection piece is so hard because you said we don't always realize it. And it also feels so normal when the media is showing us this. So then we think like we're supposed to feel insecure about this. At least that's how I saw it. Like, you're supposed to feel like this. Like, this is a normal thing. And it is normal that we feel this way, but we don't have to feel this way forever. And I know my younger cousins, I remember I'm about a decade older than them. So I remember like standing in the mirror and like looking at my stomach and like holding it and feeling insecure about my outfits and making comments about it all the time. And when they got older and became teenagers, they started doing the same thing. And I was like, why do you do that? Like, you're perfect. Stop spending so much time like analyzing things and thinking something's wrong with you. And they're like, but Cheska, you did that. Like, you did that and you do that. So that's what we do. And I didn't realize that I was modeling that. And it wasn't until, I want to say that it was after even my kidneys were shutting down. It was maybe, I want to say like a year ago, that I started to realize all these behaviors I was doing them. It became conscious. Right. And that was really scary for me.
Yeah. And a lot of times, you're going into parenthood not even being conscious of those behaviors, right? Not even knowing that you're doing them. So that's why just educating yourself about how to like reconnect yourself and be aware of those things is really such an important tool and something that I'm passionate about advocating for, because if you're listening right now, you may not even think about yourself when you're talking about raising confident kids or body confident kids. And then we're here talking about like how that's important, and it becomes okay, like I maybe need to shift this a bit so that I can, be the best version of myself for them. I just think it's such an important concept to get us into that space. And, you don't have to have the best body image ever all the time to be a supportive parent in raising your kids to be confident. It's more about being aware of when you're struggling and what messages you're sending. And then probably, it doesn't hurt to do the work yourself.
So for those who are listening and it's starting to become some awareness is happening, like, oh, I do these behaviors too, or maybe I'm modeling this for my loved ones. How can they begin to start that inner work of connecting more of what's happening and healing that relationship with themselves?
I think just that recognition and realization in the first place is amazing. I always say out like professional help in that space is a beautiful thing. And doesn't only have to be therapy. There are other professionals. There can be dietitians and nutritionists. There can be somatic healers who work on like integrating the mind and the body. But in some way, trying to reconnect mind and body would be the ideal space when you start to recognize that. If you don't have that capacity, that's okay. I would start with like journaling and just trying to reconnect, like when you're having really bad food days or really bad body image days, or you're talking negatively to yourself, check in with yourself about what's happening, check in the morning, check in the evening, maybe take a little bit of a journal of what you did that day and start to just try to make connections. And first, the biggest thing is that awareness, and then stopping it once that awareness happens and talking kindly to yourself, both about your body and yourself. It doesn't hurt to sort of examine where that relationship kind of turned negative for you individually. I think for most people, it has like a marking moment. And then when that happens, trying to reconnect, like, was there a traumatic incident? Was it really media influenced? Was it social, like peers, was it your environment, like for you being in the cheerleading world and that became like a really important part of your life, that then the message around you. So kind of working on understanding where the messages came from. But I do think it's possible to have that negative body image still, be aware of it, and still do okay for your kids if you're aware. So I really just think becoming aware and being more connected to it is going to be like the primary thing that I think everybody should focus on. And, as an eating disorder therapist, I always, no matter who walks into my door, I always ask those questions. And sometimes they're not relevant, but it's really so important in any space to understand your relationship with food as an individual, good and bad. So it can't hurt either way. And usually it's indicative of your relationship with other things.
It's that awareness piece really is so important. And it's so hard. And for me, it was so scary because then I had to make a conscious choice, right? I had to start paying attention to it. It was no longer just happening. It was something that I almost felt like I was actively choosing at that point too. I mean, I was actively choosing to not eat. I was actively choosing to go out on those really long walks. And that was really hard because those are behaviors that became habits and ingrained in me. And then
and I think when you're struggling with an actual eating disorder, it really I always call it like the devil angel on your shoulder. Like it's like a voice. The eating disorder voice kind of becomes louder than your own voice, which is the angel, right? And so a lot of the work then comes, how do I get a stronger voice? How do I become more confident in my voice? And that is what we want to teach our children essentially too, is there's going to be negative voices and negative peer influences, no matter where we are in the world. How do we make our voice louder? And by no means is that an easy process. It's definitely difficult. But I think it's important when we look at it that way, because it allows us as individuals to separate ourselves as being authentically not good or bad versus it being sort of an external force that's within us that we are combating in some space.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Angel versus devil on your shoulder. How do you make that kind of like angel voice, that self-love voice a little bit louder? How do you do you tune out the devil on your shoulder? How does that work?
It takes some practice in terms of like tuning it out. And sometimes a lot of times I will tell people to start with just actually talking out loud to the voice. And so when the voice is saying like, you don't need to eat that, that's going to make you fat, or you're going to, if you eat that, you are going to disregard everything that you did today. And it's turning back and saying out loud, like, no, I'm not. I'm going to be okay if I eat this, and rationally challenging it. Sometimes I tell people to write down the challenges and keep the challenges nearby that you write down. So if you're having a really bad day, you can just open the note section of your phone or open your journal and read those challenges and remind yourself of the challenges. And then as you slowly start to do the things against what the voice is telling you and things are still okay, there becomes a freedom in learning like, oh, okay, I can take a 3-mile walk and still feel good. It doesn't have to be 5 miles, or I can eat lunch and go lay down and that's okay. And again, that takes a lot longer. There's a lot of distress tolerance that comes with that. But it's sort of like a behavioral pattern to act against the voice.
I like that, talking out loud to the voice. I think it feels less powerful when you're externalizing that voice and you're having a conversation with it and almost like reasoning with it and creating like this idea that doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah. And a lot of people will tell me that once they do that, it's almost as though like they've known those challenges in their brain, but once they say them out loud or they write them down on paper, more reality is given to them and they're able to find more power in that as well.
Yeah. I'm going to try this because this morning I had like 2 figs for breakfast. I didn't eat because I had a late dinner and I had a bigger dinner than usual. And that voice in my head was just like, put something in your body because you're supposed to, but don't really consume a lot of calories. And what if I did talk out loud to that voice?
Try it. Let me know. Report back. I think most clients really do find a way to start there. And that becomes a good component in changing things up for themselves a little bit and getting more powerful in their own space.
Yeah. And then we've been talking so much about, being a kid and growing and then puberty. But as we continue to go through life, our body changes. One thing we talked about in our intro call is even like when you're going through menopause, your body's going to change again. So it's not just right now in this moment, it's going to continuously happen. So how can we, I guess, carry these tools with us?
Yeah. So I think the goal idea is body neutrality, where we talk about, we don't have to love our body every day. That our body, but what is our body's purpose? It's our energy, it's our fuel, it's our car, right? And we have to fuel that car to keep us going, because what are the things that our body lets us do? I can take a walk, I can take a run, I can play with my kids, I can, walk around a new city and travel because my body's allowing me to do those things. So rather than it being good or bad or in good shape and in bad shape, it's more about what the capability of my body is in terms of what it allows me to do. And so I think if we start to shift to that mentality as we get older and our body does inevitably change, it makes it a little bit easier to challenge the thoughts of like where we're supposed to be. I know I talk to a lot of clients around the time where they're giving birth and postpartum, where, changes happen in a woman's body after they give birth that no one educates them on either. And, my hips are never going to go back to the size that they were, or certain things about, have just changed inevitably. And can we be accepting of that, because it's given me birth to life and it's given me this experience and it's brought me motherhood. So visualizing it instead of as something that is our identity, instead it's something that's just part of us, that is part of who we are. I always ask people in session, like, what is your favorite thing about you and your least favorite thing? And when I ask them their favorite thing, most of the time it's radio silence, and they can't even think of anything. And they'll be like, my hair or my eyelashes. And then when I ask them their worst part about them, they're going to give me a body part, my stomach, my arms, my legs. And then I say, what would your friends say is the best thing about you and the worst thing about you? And it's like, I'm kind, I'm honest, I'm, reliable. It's nothing that has to do with your body, right? And so again, that your body is not your identity in any way. It doesn't make you good or bad as a person. It's not what's remembered about you. It's not the part of you that you shine out. It's that neutrality that it's just a component of, and that you just want to fuel it and allow it to provide you with the most beneficial life that you can.
I really like that exercise. I do it to my friends when I am feeling when I notice the depressive episodes are starting to come on. I'll text them, why do you love me? Or like, what's your favorite part of our friendship? Or why are we?
Love that.
And that way, because in my brain, I can't think of anything nice to say to myself. I'm convincing myself over and over again that I don't like myself. So when I'm able to get that feedback from my friends, I can start to see myself a tiny bit through their eyes. Not that I fully believe it at all. It's not that easy, but it gives me something to reframe to when I'm telling myself that I am a bad person or I'm mean. And then my friends are saying, you're kind-hearted, you go out of your way to help others. It makes the thoughts less permanent feeling.
I love that you reach out to your friends like that. That's amazing.
You probably find me so annoying, but it's fine.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think that's an amazing thing to be able to do and to be able to share with people in those moments. And I know that you do so much about, suicide prevention and making sure that people are in that space, and being able to have that source in those really dark moments is life-changing.
Yeah. I think after this, I'm going to text them when I'm feeling insecure about my body, when I'm feeling like I don't want to eat. What do you wish you could say to me?
Love that.
I'm going to make a whole notes album.
And I also think in line with your cards and the awesome messages that you send to support people, how cool would it be to just randomly text friends that we love and support cool things about them? Like, I love that you're the friend that's honest, or that you're the friend that's reliable, or that you're the friend that keeps it together. Because as individuals, part of one of the things in my series is about also complimenting kids in that way. Like, we are so fixated on, you're so cute and you're so pretty. And listen, I have 2 girls. I tell them they're pretty too. And I want them to feel that. But why is that the thing that we automatically go to versus you're so strong, you're so smart, you're so funny, you're so intelligent. So as caregivers, one of the biggest things is start complimenting things outside of looks and start to ingrain those things into our children's lives. And let's do the same for our friends, right? Even as adults, we need that. So more outlandish support, just randomly. I mean, your friend may be like, why are you texting me this? But I think at the end of the day, it's everybody feels good when they're complimented innately for who they are.
That's so true. And I never thought about sending it back. That now I'm like, maybe I am mean. No. It's really important and true, because if I receive that message randomly, it would make me feel really good. It is something people often, like my grandmother likes to go around her assisted living and like pass the phone around and show everyone like her grandkids. And they're always saying to, whether it's the granddaughters or the grandsons, like, oh, they're so beautiful, they're so whatever. And then when someone doesn't say that, it like goes straight to this internalization of it. And if we stop focusing so much, or compliments, like you said, on these external looks and about who someone is, I just think that self-worth and self-love, at least for me, would be
Absolutely.
A lot higher.
I think for most people, I think at the core, for most people, that needing external validation about how we look physically really stems from the inability to love ourselves internally. And, you know, I won't put down the fact that for women, and I will speak for women, although, you know, I feel like a lot of men also feel the same, but for women, it's okay to want to feel beautiful and to want to feel like your best self. Like there's nothing wrong with that either, but making that the whole importance of it is really where it becomes systematic, you know? And on a sad day, if I get my hair blown out, I do feel better. And I know that about myself, but that's okay. I'm not basing my whole entire self-worth on that external appearance though.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, when I get my hair darkened again, because I'm naturally like a dirty blonde, so I start to become blonde, and I'm like, I'm getting my personality back. Like my entire excitement about myself changes, my viewpoint. So
I'm not going to sit here and say there's nothing to external looks that don't make us feel good. Yeah. Like I like to get dressed. I like to do these things and feel good about myself. And that's important, especially if you're feeling depressed or dark or sad, but it's really recognizing, is that my core whole self? Is that what I am the most? Or do I believe other things about me that feel good? And do I have other ways to make me feel good?
Wait, I love this. I have so much to reflect on after this. So many journal prompts for October, by the way. So thank you.
Perfect. Share them with me. We'll forward them out to the world. Like, I just want people, I think when I heard your story and I connected with you, it's like, I just want people to become more aware and really learn and challenge these things that we've been taught. I mean, we literally have been taught them from such an early age. And as I evolved as a parent and started to see things, it really ignited it in me, both clinically and personally, that like there's a way to make some difference. Are we going to make the world a difference? I don't know, but it starts with these small interactions. And so being able to go into schools now and go into places where people, or parents particularly, are really listening to me about like, how do we make these changes? Because when I ask them what are important, like that's such an important thing. They want to raise body confident kids because we have spent years not being confident in our bodies, right? So it's like, I don't want my kids to experience the same hardships that I did. What do I need to do? How do I teach myself about that? And I hope that like whoever is listening is just able to say, okay, I'm just going to start noticing the little things here and making the little changes, whether it's around their own bodies, whether it's around how they talk about food, how they talk about exercise, how they approach the media, right? Like there's only so much we can do to combine the media space, but we can have more conversations around the media, right? When we notice things in TV, when we notice things in magazines, or, you know, if they're old enough to have smartphones, like scroll with them. If they have social media, scroll with them and show them like there's so many positive accounts like yours. And then there's also really negative ones. And where does your feed bring you, right? Like how do we curate positive feeds? So there's all these like little things, little tips that we can add in that I think will make a difference.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful for you for having these conversations, because I know for me, if I ever get to the point where someone wants to have kids with me, it would be so great to know how to create these conversations, right? And it's something I think so many of us just don't, like we said in the beginning, don't have the awareness. So you're bringing that, and hopefully we'll all start to work on this next chapter and how we can bring more awareness and acceptance into our lives and the lives of people around us. As we are wrapping up, how can people learn more about you, connect with you?
You can most likely, best way to reach me is to check out my website, which is www.francescaemmalmhc.com. There you can book an appointment, you can send an email, you can kind of access me anyway. I also have an Instagram at Francesca Emma LMHC as well. So that is the best way to reach me. My workshop is also live for anybody who's interested for download, and it is fairly cost effective and really more out there to just like be out in the masses and educate more people on the topic.
Francesca, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed and appreciate getting to learn.
Thank you for using your platform to have this conversation. It's so important.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website, inspiringmygeneration.org, to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.